Good morning. Today is Monday, February 17th, 2025. Today we reach a milestone I never thought we would reach. Today is 500 days of war in Israel, 500 days of captivity for those still being held captive in Gaza. As the hostages are released, and of course we are grateful for each one who comes out, and may they all come out soon, but as each one is released, they tell us more, and we're learning more about their condition, and they also tell us about the condition of others who are still captives. And the atrocities that we are now learning that Hamas committed and is committing against the hostages is more and more terrifying. Former hostage Daniela Gilboa, she was released a couple of weeks ago. She reported that she was forced by Hamas to film a video that showed her dead. One day they came to her, the captors came to her, the camera, "Today we're filming you dead." Now, she thought that meant that they were going to kill her. She begged for her life and asked them not to do it. And then they explained, no, they were going to put something on her, like a powder on her, so she would look like she's dead, so they could show a video that she's dead. Another hostage is still being held. His name is Elia Cohen, but we have new information about him and his condition because he was being held together with a couple of the people that were just released. And his mother said on Sunday that he had been held with the hostages that were released on Shabbos, on Saturday, chained, gagged, burned with a searing hot object, hung by the feet, and starved. According to a news report on television, Israeli television, the captors routinely exposed the hostages to Israeli politicians' statements opposing the hostage deal, telling them, quote, "They don't want to get you out." The captors used to eat in front of the hostages without giving them food, and occasionally forced them to choose which one of them would eat. The barbarism and the cruelty is just, it's beyond belief. I mentioned to you Elia Cohen, who is still a hostage. He's on the list to be released, but he's still a hostage. And he has a partner. Her name is Ziv Abud. And yesterday she published on social media the following message, because now she had heard from one of the other hostages what his condition is, and she wrote this message. She wrote it to Elia on social media. "I cannot explain how painful it is to know that you are suffering, you are hungry, that it is hard for you, but also that you are strong. I want you to know that throughout this period, you were not kept only in chains, but also in the hearts of all those who love you." The hostage who were released most recently on Shabbos this past Saturday, Ohad Ben-Ami, Or Levi, and Eli Sharabi, they reported after their release they had been severely tortured during their time there. Their captors took them separately for interrogations, demanding information. Often they thought that they were soldiers when in fact they were civilians. They choked them, tied their limbs, gagged them with cloth to the point of suffocation, hung them upside down, and inflicted burns using a heated object. These three who were released this past Shabbos, Sagai Dekelchain, Sasha Trufanov, and Yair Horn. Excuse me, I said something incorrect. What I quoted from Ohad Ben-Ami or Levi El-Sharabi, they were released last week. I'm sorry, I have the dates wrong. This past Shabbos, it was Sagai Dekelchain, Sasha Trufanov, and Yair Horn who were released. I apologize for that mistake. So, on Shabbos, at the end of Shabbos, I first heard the news of these latest three releases. Baruch Hashem, thank God. And the person who told me that they had been released said to me, they look okay. Not like the three men from last week who you remember were so obviously in terrible, terrible shape. And that is true. On a very superficial snapshot level, the three men released this past Shabbos did not look as gaunt and wasted as the three men last week. But I think because of that, and as this is dripping on much too slowly, but hopefully will continue till its completion with all of them home, I think it's necessary to remember the following. Now, I've mentioned this incidentally before, but I want to just share this with a bit of detail from a real expert, Dr. Itai Gal. Dr. Itai Gal is a medical doctor in Israel, and he is one of Israel's most widely read and respected medical commentators. He writes for Ynet, Yediot Achronot, Ma'ariv, the Jewish Post, as well as he is a very frequent face on TV and voice on radio. He has published thousands of articles, and he just published a very important article in the Jerusalem Post, and I really think we need to remind ourselves of this. So this is what he said in the Jerusalem Post. Dr. Itai Gal. Despite enduring months of starvation, malnutrition, isolation, and severe torture, returning hostages often appear outwardly healthy and happy, like the female soldiers who returned earlier, and like the three that returned this past Shabbos. This deceptive appearance is driven by physiological processes that accelerate heart rate, stimulate the body, and create a temporary sense of euphoria before their release. Sagai Dekelchain, Alexander Sasha Trufanov, and Yair Horn spent nearly 500 days in captivity. Despite horrific torture, prolonged starvation, and extreme isolation, they appear in good health, smiling, walking, and engages with others. And this raises an important question. How can individuals who have suffered prolonged abuse seem so energetic and happy? And the answer is very important for us to keep in mind. The answer lies because I think the world watching might come to very, very erroneous conclusions. Well, maybe it wasn't so bad. Maybe we're exaggerating, and that is far, far from the truth. The answer lies in the body's hormonal response during the final days leading up to their release. During emotionally intense events, like being freed from captivity, the body releases hormones that affect mood and energy. An adrenaline surge creates temporary strength, alertness, and energy, though the effect is short-lived. Dopamine, a neurotransmitter produced in the brain, generates feeling of satisfaction and pleasure during moments of joy. For hostages being released, this dopamine rush creates a brief euphoria, making them appear happy and optimistic. However, once the dopamine levels drop, fatigue and even depression can quickly set in. And we know, by the way, that just among those who have been released in the last few weeks, and they undergo medical testing, we know that several of them are back in the hospital with serious conditions. Serotonin, which regulates mood and sleep and appetite, also spikes on release, giving a temporary sense of calm and confidence. A false impression of emotional stability without guaranteeing long-term well-being. The visible energy and smiles of returning hostages can mask the severe physical damage and the psychological damage. Muscle and fat loss, protein depletion, metabolic breakdown, malnutrition, vulnerable to infections, cardiac arrhythmias, and organ failure. And the psychological and neurological effects are equally severe. Many, if not most, of these who were released suffer from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, that causes flashbacks, anxiety, social withdrawal, and long-term nutritional deficiencies, which these people have all endured, also impair brain function, leading to memory loss, poor decision-making, and mood instability. And this is what we need to remember. Of course, we celebrate every hostage that we see that comes out, of course. And of course, it's fantastic, and we hope and pray that they will come out. But we need to remind ourselves that no matter what it is that we see, no matter what shape it is that we think we see them in as they come out, Dr. Gal says recovery for former hostages requires gradual, closely monitored rehabilitation, nutritional recovery, psychological support, and he concludes, while returning hostages may appear healthy and energized, their bodies have endured severe trauma. Long-term medical care and psychological support are essential. Only time will reveal the full extent of the damage and the path to complete recovery. So for now, we hope and we pray for their healing and for the safe return of all the hostages still held by Hamas. We wish them and their families and those who love them refuah shlema, complete healing of both the body, the soul, and the emotions. My friends, I wish you a good day, and I look forward to seeing you soon in person.